I am Kalen Moss, aka the Minute Admin, as some of you may know on YouTube, where I teach Marketing Cloud and just try to give a perspective into what a day in the life is like at, as a Marketing Cloud professional. So if you've ever heard of that, that's what Minute Admin is really about and what I'm about. So one thing before we actually start this entire presentation, and get started with email specialists, I want to ask if everybody knows what all of the certs are in the Marketing Cloud space. So if you see this question, let's see if you can answer this question, which is, what are the 4 Marketing Cloud certs out there? I see admin, developer, consultant, email specialist. Yeah, here we go. Nice.
It looks like Cigar got it all. Sagar got it all 4 of them.
Nice. Okay, cool. We got it. Sukesh, he even had the Marketing Cloud in front of everything, like wrote the whole thing out. Nice. Okay, cool. So it looks like everybody knows the 4 certifications. Pretty much everybody was correct here. I don't think I saw anybody that said anything else. So we're focused on the Marketing Cloud email specialist. Personally, this is a question I get all the time when it comes to Marketing Cloud. What is the first cert you would get in the Marketing Cloud space, and how should you get the certifications? Which ones should you get after each other? This is what I put as my order. Now, this is obviously not a part of our discussion here, but I know this might be a question for some of you if you're just starting off in Marketing Cloud. I always say email specialist solely because what you're learning in this email specialist exam guide and as an email specialist is how to actually execute campaigns. So how do you set a campaign up from, data extensions to creating the content and content builder, which is what we'll talk about today. And then how do you automate everything and report on that? So an email specialist has to know all of that content, which is why, this boot camp was put together. And I just want to also say thank you to Gilda, Naji, and JB for putting this together, because I know this is a difficult cert for a lot of people. And to make this a free resource that everybody can watch for absolutely free is amazing. So thank you for that. And thank you to everybody on the call today. Just want to say you could have been anywhere in the world and you're here today. So just want to say thank you for investing in your learning. I love teaching. I love learning. So I'm sure we're all in the same boat when it comes to that. So I appreciate you for being here today. So what is my goal today? So what are you going to get out of this presentation? What are you going to learn today? So my goal for you today is to prepare for the content creation and delivery section of the email specialist certification. So we're going to help you get prepared for that specific section. And I'm also going to help you learn why this stuff matters. So without really knowing why, you're probably like, okay, cool, I put something together, but I have no idea why I actually did that. So I'm going to help you learn why this stuff actually matters. And then at the end, I'm going to give you some valuable learning resources, additional information to learn from after we go through our session today. So what we're going to cover today is send management. We're going to cover why send management is important. And we're going to talk about transactional emails versus promotional emails. And then we're going to talk about organizing your customer data. So if I can turn on this pin, I don't know how you turn on the pin on Google Slides, but if you just follow the mouse here, under send management, we're going to be talking about, once again, why it matters. We're going to talk about sender authentication package, and then we're going to talk about send classifications and IP reputation. So that's what's going to be involved in this first segment of what we'll cover. Transactional messaging, we'll talk about why that matters and what transactional versus promotional messages are. And then audience segmentation, why that matters and how to organize your data, and data filters versus SQL queries, and then automating everything. So we're going to cover all of this within these 3 bullet points. So how does all of this relate to the exam? It'd be cool if I, just taught you everything and you learned something, but how does that actually correlate to what you're going to learn on this certification you're taking? So if you look at the email specialist certification, you will see these 5 sections right here, which are email best practices all the way to insights and analytics. What we're covering today is we're going to be covering content creation, specifically recommending the tools that you would use when you're preparing for an email send, and then creating and customizing an email message to meet a customer's needs. But also when we talk about send management, we're going to still be talking about the things that impact if your messages are going to get delivered to your audience or not, and then how to design effective emails. So we're still going to dive back into a little bit of email marketing best practices, because I think the two intertwine, and that's what we're going to be covering, and you can correlate to the rest of the exam when we finish talking about what we talk about today. So let's talk about send management. Why is send management important? First, before we even talk about what it is, let's talk about the why it matters. So let me give you this scenario here, this real scenario that could happen to any enterprise organization. You could have 1 million subscribers on an email list and send to those 1 million people, right? So let's say you sent to all 1 million people, just hypothetically. Okay, you sent that email to all of those people. The next thing that happens is about 700,000 of them say that you are either spam, or they don't know you, or they just automatically delete you, or you're blocked from sending to them because you haven't interacted very well, you haven't warmed up your IP, you haven't done the steps it takes to actually get to their inbox. That's almost like throwing money out the window. So that is literally what you're doing if you don't have your send management on point before you actually start sending your email messages. A lot of people think, oh, I've got Marketing Cloud, I can just start sending thousands of messages tomorrow. That's not how it works. It's like going through airport security. You cannot just walk onto the plane. You have to go through a system of steps and processes and checks to make sure you're legitimate and you can actually go to the other side. So things, places like Gmail, Outlook, Yahoo, AOL, if that still exists, all of these different internet service or inbox service providers have a set of security measures you have to go through to become verified to actually send all those messages. So that's what we're going to talk about. Sender authentication package is the core component to an enterprise business unit whenever you're setting up your send reputation. So let's talk about sender authentication package here. Sender authentication package includes private domain, your own private domain, and we'll talk about what that is. I won't just leave you guessing what that is. I'm going to tell you exactly what these 4 pieces are and how they relate to increasing your ability to get to your subscribers' inbox. So we've got private domain all the way down to reply mail management, and we'll take a look at those. So let's talk about private domain. All right, let's understand first what a domain actually is. So a lot of people might be like, okay, I don't even know what a domain is, let alone private domain. So when you set up sender authentication package, you get to choose the domain that you want. So let's say you were going to like Namecheap or Bluehost or GoDaddy.com, right? And you went and you bought a domain name like Google.com or Nike.com or Adidas.com or Salesforce.com. You go on there, you get your own domain. And whenever you set up a domain, you get an email address, an email domain that allows you to have Kalen Moss at company.com, right? Or at Nike.com or at Salesforce.com. So the domain part is after the www, and you get to have that. You get one of those, your own private domain, and then if you want to, you can buy subdomains just as easy as you can buy domains. So you could have email at google.com or help at google.com or no reply at google.com. And let's look at what that actually looks like. Here, let's look at a real world example. So a private domain, I got this message from Nike when I ordered some basketball shoes, and let's look at what the private domain looks like. So the private domain determines the from name and the from email address. So we have Nike.com, which is who it's from, who this message is from. And then we have the from email address. So what is the email address this came from? And this came from Nike at official.nike.com. Remember from that last picture, this is the subdomain, this is the domain, and this is the last part, which is the top level, this area here. But what we're focused on is what's in the red and in the green. So as you can see, Nike had their own official.nike.com, just like we saw in that last picture. So that's what you get whenever you set up sender authentication package. That's just one feature that you get whenever you set up sender authentication package. You get a from name and from email address, private domain that belongs to you and is branded by you. Now, the next thing you get is custom account branding. You can basically put your URL parameters around all of your links and all of your image URLs whenever you're tracking your links that your customers clicked on or opened inside of your email. So if you ever clicked on an email and you've opened up a link in there, most of the time companies are tracking those links to see if you open those up and to track more information about you. But whenever you open that link up, you might see a URL that pops up in the URL browser. And if it says marketingcloud.com or exacttarget.com, you might wonder, why doesn't that say Nike.com if you're shopping on Nike.com? So the custom account branding allows your brand to be everywhere when customers open up their links inside of emails. Now, you also get a dedicated IP address. Now, a dedicated IP address is literally just a location that basically just a geolocation, a spot that the internet service providers or the servers give you whenever they're identifying your domain name. So think about whenever you type into Nike.com, what you see and what I see is we see Nike.com. But what the computer actually sees is the computer sees these digits of numbers here. So 156533725. The servers that are operating all across the internet aren't looking at this name Nike.com. They're looking at these numbers. So the main thing you want to know is that you get your own number right here. And when you get your own number, that's actually a big deal because it allows you to control the entire sending process, which we're going to talk about here in a second. So just remember, you get your own dedicated IP address whenever you set up sender authentication package. And when we start talking about some email deliverability issues and improvements, we'll start talking about how the IP address solves that. So now that we understand a little bit about dedicated IPs, let's talk about shared IPs. A shared IP is kind of like sharing an apartment unit with a bunch of people, right? Or an apartment building with a bunch of people. You're all sharing power in that apartment building. You're all sharing water in that apartment building. You're all sharing everything in that apartment building if you live in an apartment building like these, right? So you have to remember the same thing happens with a shared IP address. So there might be an IP address that is shared among multiple different companies. So if you're a smaller company and you don't send up to 100,000 messages per month, you're probably on a shared IP address. So dedicated IP address really only matters if you're sending 100,000 messages a month or more. But if you're sending less than that, then you're probably on a shared IP address. One thing you want to understand and some risks that are associated with having a shared IP address is that if somebody in that group messes up the reputation, like let's say buys a list of customers and sends messages unsolicited to those purchased customers, then those customers could say, who is this sending messages to me? I'm going to say this is spam, and I'm not going to open this back up. So that's the thing you want to be aware of is you might be on a shared IP address with somebody who is not following the rules very well, and that could actually affect your deliverability rates. So the question becomes, when do you actually want to move from a shared IP address to a dedicated IP address? And the answer is, if you're sending at least 100,000 messages a month or more, that's when you need to start thinking about a dedicated IP address. So I'm getting a question from some people, from some of you here, and the question is it 100,000 emails per month for a dedicated IP address? Yes, so at least 100,000 messages a month or more. You want to have that on the safe side, because if you are not sending 100,000 messages or more, and you have a dedicated IP address, the inbox service providers like Gmail, Outlook, Yahoo, all them, they're going to probably look at that and say, there's something wrong here. That's fishy. I don't know why. And that's just the way the algorithm works. So you want to make sure that you're sending more than 100,000 messages a month. So that's when you would use it. Now, if you are sending, like if you're maybe a healthcare provider, somebody who has millions and millions of people in the system, then, and you're sending more than 2 million messages per day, you're probably going to need more than one IP address, because an IP address can only handle so many messages, and you probably want to purchase another IP address, which you can dedicate to that domain. So if you want to just use 2 different IP addresses to send multiple millions of messages, probably going to be the best option. And there's multiple reasons behind that, but for the sake of the exam, we want to know just these facts that we're seeing on this page here. So when we're talking about the entire journey of making sure we have a quality sender reputation, we want to talk about IP warming. And IP warming is going to be a very intricate process that you're going to have to really pay a lot of attention to. And the goal of IP warming is to make sure that when you get that new dedicated IP address, when you set that new dedicated IP address up, you're not going to have any sending reputation. So you're going to basically look like everybody else when it comes to sending messages out of an email service provider like Marketing Cloud. So what that means is you're going to look like a spammer, because data shows that most people who start up a new dedicated IP are usually spammers. That's just the history. That's just the data. And Gmail, Outlook, Yahoo, everybody, all those email service providers understand that, and they're going to force you to earn your right to deliver your messages to your customers. So what do you need to do to earn that right? You need to warm your IP up. You need to make sure that you have a quality sender reputation, and you actually warm up to those email service providers and they start trusting you. You need about 30 days of sending so they can kind of trust you and they understand who you are. But the journey to actually ramping is going to be very specific and very segmented and focused. Now, what that means is if you just follow like a 3-step process on your framework on how you want to ramp, you want to think about, okay, which domains am I sending to? You want to segment by all the domains you're sending to. Then you want to segment based on maybe if those customers within those domain segments are highly engaged, medium engaged, or not engaged. Understand what the engagement is and start sending to your most engaged subscribers across those different domains to start warming those different domains up. So if you're working with Yahoo, Gmail, Outlook, you want to start with the most engaged subscribers first and start getting that engagement, that when you send those messages, those people start clicking those links, they start opening those emails, and Gmail, Outlook, Yahoo, they can start to see that, wow, okay, this person is actually legitimate. They're not just sending spam mail that people are just deleting as soon as they see the title, of the subject line. So once you start to gain that, you can start sending more messages as time goes on. And it's basically like working out, right? You wouldn't go into the gym and just start squatting 500 pounds. You'd probably go in there and warm up and stretch a little bit. So that's kind of the same thing when it comes to IP warming. You don't want to just jump all the way in, or you're going to ruin that reputation if you just start sending to everybody on your lists with a new dedicated domain. So also some of the factors that affect IP warming: overall list size, the quality of your lists, and really that subscriber engagement piece. So just remember, those are the things that are basically the things you need to know about the IP warming process for now, especially as you're preparing for the exam. And as we go forward, The last piece of our sender authentication package is reply mail management. So it is exactly as it sounds. It handles more than 90% of all the messages that come in whenever you send messages out. So you might send 50,000 messages out to an email list and then get, let's say, 750 responses. There's absolutely no way you're going to answer those 750 responses. So where do those messages need to go and how do they need to be routed? How do you need to reply to those messages? So that's where reply mail management comes in, and you send a message to a subscriber. That subscriber replies to you and says something like maybe opt out or unsubscribe me. Maybe they don't click the unsubscribe link and they just say, I don't like receiving these messages, or stop sending these messages to me. And reply mail management will read that email that they send back to you. And based on the rules you have set up in reply mail management, it'll start filtering that out. So if anyone's wanting to unsubscribe, reply mail management handles that for you. And if anyone has any out of office replies, like an automatic out of office, thank you for reaching me, I'm out of office for so-and-so days, reply mail management will read that and just say, okay, that's junk mail, basically. That's not something we need to look at. And then it'll just basically take everything else that doesn't match that filter criteria and forward that to the right party. So maybe a customer service desk, or maybe to the manager of some department, but reply mail management will handle that for you. So really a really good time-saving tool. So let's look at what reply mail management in some of these areas actually look like. What I actually want to do is go through this entire list here of what I want to talk through, and then I want to just do a demo. So let's go ahead and get done with with all the slides here, and then let's go in and let's start setting reply mail management up, sender authentication pack. Well, we can't set up sender authentication package on this call, but everything else we're going to talk about we'll set up when it comes to send management. So let's talk about send classifications. So this is just the next building block to making sure you're sending the right transactionally sound type of message. So let's talk about what that means. So send classifications are built with three building blocks, built up with three building blocks. The first building block is a sender profile. The next building block is a delivery profile. And the third building block is the CAN spam class. What does that mean? What is a sender profile? This is what a sender profile is. I don't even want to have to explain what the definition is. I just want to just show this to you as far as what I've received in these screenshots here. So when it comes to a sender profile, it's just the name that it's from, the from name, right? The from name of the company, the name it's from, and then the name of the email address, or what the email address is, the from email address, right? So you'll see in documentation, the sender profile is the from name and the from email address. All that means is who sent me this message? Oh, Nike. And then what was their email address? Nike@official.nike.com. I put in a couple more screenshots so you can see this. So TripAdvisor sent me a message trying to get me to go on a vacation recently. Took a screenshot of that. That's the from name. That's the name it's from. And then this is the from email address. So info@mp1, which we can tell this is a subdomain email because we have this mp1.tripadvisor. We know tripadvisor.com is the domain name. So we know that they're using an email subdomain. So we can see the from name and from email address here. Now that's sender profile. Delivery profile is the IP address and the header and footer that you're going to use for your email. So what does that mean? So we'll actually look at that when we get into the demo here in a second, but the delivery profile is the header and footer. So as you can see up here in this Nike email, we have this header, which says kind of just web version, but sometimes you'll see view as a web page up here in the header. That's what you can define in the delivery profile. And then you can define the footer that your email is going to have with the delivery profile. So as you can see, this email here, we have as the footer at the very bottom. And then remember, IP address is the IP address we're going to use to send messages from. So remember, every IP address has its own custom, what's the best word to use? Its own custom reputation. Remember, every dedicated IP address that you've purchased has its own reputation. So maybe you want to use different IPs for different types of emails that you send out. So maybe transactional emails and commercial emails have two different IPs because commercial emails tend to get unsubscribed from, whereas transactional emails don't and really can't be unsubscribed from. So we'll talk about that. And actually, we'll get into that right now, the difference between commercial emails and transactional emails. So this is the second part of what we're going to be covering in our session today. So transactional messages and versus commercial messages. What are commercial messages? Think of the word commercial, and what's the first thing you think of? I'm just going to look in the chat. What's the first thing you think of when you think of a commercial? Ad, marketing, selling, advertisement, promotion. Yep. I see something in another language. I'm sure that's probably saying promo or something. Perfect. So cool. We know what an ad is. We know what a commercial is. So you're right on point. Everybody's on point here. Now, when we're talking about a commercial email, it's basically looks like this. Imagine you have an email that you got from Starbucks trying to get you to come into a Starbucks and order a nice vanilla cold brew or something like that. And it's almost like a TV commercial that you see on the Super Bowl or during the game or during your favorite TV show, trying to get you to come into a store or trying to get you to come in to get some fast food or something like that. Now, the thing is, commercial emails are exactly like TV commercials. They're there to get you to buy stuff. They're there to get you to come in and interact with the brand, maybe come in and use their service, maybe come in and use their product, buy their product. But the whole goal is come in, buy from us. Now, that is a completely different approach towards your audience than transactional messages, because we are trying to actively get them to buy from us, which means we have to follow some more strict rules, which also means we have to put an unsubscribe link. If people don't want to see that anymore, they can basically say, I'm opting out. I want to unsubscribe. And then we need to have a physical mailing address just in case people want to, I don't know what they would want to do with their physical mailing address, but in case, what I've heard is that so people can send messages directly to headquarters and know exactly where headquarters is. But I would say that you really need to be aware of what you need to know for the email specialist certification. And I will tell you right now, if you're making any notes, definitely write down that your commercial emails need to have an unsubscribe link and a physical mailing address. So that's the key differentiator between a commercial email and now a transactional email. So a transactional email is exactly what it sounds like. It's just a transaction that occurred and you're getting basically a receipt. So if you've ever gone to, let's say, the store and you paid with your iPhone, your Android or whatever, you Apple Pay, right? So you don't get a receipt. Most of the time I don't get a receipt. I don't get a physical receipt because I'm not going to carry it. So I'll just say, hey, send it to my email or text it to me. So this is kind of what a transactional is, right? So I go into the store, I buy something, a transaction occurs, and I receive a receipt. Now, that's exactly what we're looking at here. We're looking at this Starbucks transaction. I must have been craving Starbucks when I was making this, but we have this transaction here, and it's $3.33. And this is just a receipt, right? So this went to someone's email address. They saw when they came into the store, they saw how much they tipped, they saw how much they paid, and they don't need to have a physical copy. Now, the difference between a transactional and a commercial email is not just these two things. The difference is you don't have to follow the same rules as commercial emails with transactional emails. So you don't need an unsubscribe link. You don't need an unsubscribe link in a transactional email because what is there to unsubscribe from, right? You just got a transaction and you know, at the moment of your transaction, there was on the kiosk or from your from the clerk, they said, did you want a receipt? Do you want a receipt with that? So you get to actually now choose if you want a receipt or not. So there's nothing to really unsubscribe from. If you choose to have a receipt come to you, you probably are using that for record keeping. So there no need to have an unsubscribe link. But you do need to make sure that the messages you are sending that have the classification of this is a transactional type of email, you need to make sure that the content is actually transactional, right? Like if you're tricking people and you're saying, oh yeah, this is a transactional message. I'm just going to send all my promotional messages from there, from our transactional message classification. Then you probably are going to get blocked because that's a big warning here. You're probably going to end up on the blocked list and have people basically saying, there's no way I can unsubscribe from this message. So I'm just going to block them, or I'm going to say that they're spam. And I think the rule is now still, if you get a 0.5% spam rating from your from any sort of Gmail or Yahoo or Outlook or any of those customers, you're pretty much put on the blacklist. And you're not gonna get through. So you want to make sure you don't get a high spam rating, or it's going to be hard to get out of that and recover from that. Because remember, it's like lighting money on fire if you're sending 100,000 messages, but only 10,000 actually get to your subscribers. You might be missing 90,000 people. So you definitely want to make sure you're not just throwing money out the window. So yeah, that's what I just put in here is people will block you in a heartbeat if you're bombarding them with emails they can't unsubscribe from. So let's talk about send classification. Send classification looks like this inside of Marketing Cloud in the setup menu. We'll go and look at it here in a little bit, but you can see where you put your sender profile, your delivery profile, and your canned spam classification. And once you set that up, it's saved in one place, and you don't have to reinvent the wheel basically every time you send an email out to your subscribers. So we'll see what that looks like when we get into our demo. And the last thing we're going to talk about is how all of this matters whenever you're actually sending content. So let's talk about segmenting your subscribers and the importance of segmenting your subscribers so you do get those high open rates. So why does segmentation matter? So think about it like this. If I tell you something that you're interested in, you're going to be more likely to open up that email. If I show you something you're not interested in, you've never thought about, you don't like, you might have had childhood trauma about, you just hate it, absolutely hate it, and I tried to show that to you and I tried to say, hey, look at this cool thing, you might be like, why are you showing me that? I don't want to see that, right? So the number one thing you want to do is make sure you're sending the right message to the right person. And that's really where segmentation comes in. So that's where you start to understand what people like, what they're more likely to respond to. And that increases your open rates, click-through rates, conversion rates, unsubscribes, and avoids you from going to the spam filter, because people actually will like what you're sending to them. So why does segmentation matter? Now let's look at this example. And as we go through this example, the pieces will start to come together. But let's say there's a shoe company that sells shoes across the entire United States. I just say Nike all the time because I think most people know Nike. So I'll just say, let's say Nike sells shoes all across the United States, but they want to send a message to two different audiences. We'll just keep it super simple. They just want to send a message to two different audiences of people. One audience is the people who live in Alaska and they're selling them snowshoes. The other audience are people in South Florida that we're selling sandals to. So you want to find all the people who live in Alaska. So you want to run a segment, maybe a data filter or a SQL query, and find all the people who live in Alaska that are customers of yours, and then send them a message related to snowshoes, something that actually relates to them. And then if you want, you can also segment a different data extension and say, hey, with a data filter or a SQL query, I'm going to find all the people who live in Florida, but maybe not only Florida, but maybe let's say Miami or the Keys, right? And you say, I'm going to find all those people who have addresses there, and I'm going to send them messages on sandals. So that's where segmentation really matters, because you want to make sure you're getting the right message to the right audience. If you are sending sandals to someone in Alaska during December, and you're sending these snow boots or snowshoes to someone in Florida in December, that's going to be two completely opposite messages there. Neither one of them are going to want it, and neither one of them are going to need it. So they're going to automatically delete it. So that's where you need to understand the segmentation piece is probably the most critical after making sure you have your sender reputation set up. So when we talk about segmenting our subscribers, we have multiple ways to segment our subscribers. Two ways to segment our subscribers here. There's data filters, which are easy for most marketers because it's just drag and drop. It's very easy. If you've ever been in Sales Cloud or Service Cloud and you've used reports, dashboards, you know how easy it is to drag and drop information. That's how data filters are set up. You just find the field you're looking for and you say, if address is equal to, let's say, or if state is equal to, let's say, Florida, make me a data extension with this data filter. You don't need to know how to do any code. It's super easy. This is one thing I will say, if you're taking notes for the exam, to definitely write down, because you might see some questions around when you need to choose between a SQL query and a data filter. So you just want to know, when would I use a data filter and when would I use a SQL query? So data filters is for, low code, there's no code actually, and easy for marketers that don't know how to code. Now, SQL queries are more complex. They're not hard, really. I mean, I learned SQL in 2 days, the basics. I'm not some SQL expert, but I went through a small little boot camp and on YouTube and just watched like 3 hours worth of videos and learned SQL and did some exercises. So it's not a very hard language, but it is more of the coding side of SQL. So or of Marketing Cloud segmentation. So SQL does allow you to do more specific things than data filters. SQL allows you to get more granular if you want to. You can also decide which specific fields you want to include in a data extension. So you don't have to have every field from a data extension copy and pasted, basically, like a data filter would. But you can get very granular with SQL, and then you can also combine multiple data extensions. So let's say you are a car company, like let's say Tesla, and you are at the store. You've got customer information you're gathering, like what's the customer's first name, what's the customer's last name, what is the customer's preferred car, and then you have a completely separate database at headquarters that has an inventory of all the cars that are available. Well, when you're at the kiosk and you're deciding if you want the new Cybertruck, you're pulling from this data extension in the back end, which is keeping track of all the inventory of how many Cybertrucks are available. So that's really where SQL can come in and combine the two and say, hey, this customer was interested in this Cybertruck, and that you can put a link between the two data extensions with SQL. So you can get very complex with SQL. SQL is one of the most widely used tools in the entire world, probably, if not the most, besides Excel. So SQL is used everywhere, but that's the second way. So if you're on the exam and you're trying to decide which tool to use, remember SQL will be for someone with more coding experience, more knowledge on that end. And if you want to combine multiple data extensions together, remember the only way you can do that is with SQL. So how do you actually automate everything? If you don't want to, run SQL queries every single day to make sure that the audience is refreshed, or refresh the data filter, what do you do to actually make sure that you can set up the SQL query, set up the data filter, and go enjoy your pina colada on the beach and actually take vacation? Well, that tool is going to be Automation Studio. So that's going to be, you can use Automation Studio activities like data filter activity. You can use the SQL query activity, and you can automate everything. So this is what it'll actually look like inside of Automation Studio, just from a bare bones perspective. You can Set your starting source for your automation to either be scheduled or file drop, which is something you're definitely going to need to know for the exam. So I'm not going to cover automation in depth, but just definitely make sure you understand the two different automation starting sources, file drop automation and scheduled automation. The next thing you can do after the automation starts is you can run your data filter activity. So that'll automatically filter your subscribers if that's the way you want to do it. And then you can also filter your subscribers with a SQL query activity. So that's the way it looks inside of Marketing Cloud Automation Studio. So before we get into the demo, let's just recap what we covered today. So we covered send management, which is sender authentication package, send classifications, and IP reputation, and transactional messaging. So promotional versus transactional, and then audience segmentation. So organizing your data, why that matters, and then data filters versus SQL queries and automating everything. So we talked about everything we had planned today. And just want to kind of talk about what you're going to get after. So before we go into demo, I'm just going to give you everything here. Everything I talked about today, you can actually go into more depth on, and I'm just going to give you these resources for that. So if you want to watch this again, but also go through some valuable learning content, you've got those additional resources here. And this all relates to the exam by everything that you see having an arrow pointing next to it. So this is what we've covered in the exam today. So now that we've covered these concepts, let's actually go into Marketing Cloud and look at some of this stuff and see how it actually even makes sense, to why any of this even makes sense. So the first thing I want to do is I want to go to Marketing Cloud here, and I'm going to just zoom in a little bit here. And we're just going to look at Marketing Cloud. We're going to go to, first thing we're going to go to is we're going to go to send classifications, just to make sure you understand what that looks like and the pieces behind that. Let me refresh this, and then we're going to look at that. Okay. So as we go in, as we come into here, we're going to just type in, I'm just going to type in send. And we have under Email Studio, we have sender profiles and send classifications. Now I'm just going to go to my send classifications. And remember, send classifications determine the sender profile, delivery profile, and canned spam classification. So I want you to see why that's important, because remember, if we have multiple sender profiles here, let's say, I don't know why I always think of this, but I always think of, let's say I got a message from Mark Benioff, and it said Mark Benioff at salesforce.com. I would be like, oh my gosh, like I made it. Mark Benioff messaged me. But if I looked at that from email address and I realized, oh wait, in that sender profile, it says no reply at salesforce.com or customer support at salesforce.com or whatever it was. Obviously they wouldn't use Mark Benioff's name, but you could, that's how I always think of a sender profile. You could have an amazing person that's sending this message to you and you're like, wow, I can't believe they messaged me. And then you could look at the from name and realize, oh, it's a spammer, right? So that's how I kind of think about a sender profile. I know there's a lot of spammers that send messages out in email, and I always look at what the from name is before I click anything inside of the email, which could lead to malware and stuff like that. So the sender profile is made up of that. The delivery profile is the IP address and the header and footer. We'll look at that here in a second. And the canned spam classification, remember there's two types, commercial versus transactional. So we can identify this specific, let's say, test classification number one. We could say, if we're really making this, we could identify which canned spam classification we want for this send classification. We could say we want the default sender profile. If we had different delivery profiles, we could choose it. But let's just say I want to change it to transactional. And I want to say this is the new classification. And I save it. we've got a new send classification that we can use for emails. Okay, so we're going to just use this as an example when we create an email and we use our send classification. So now that you've seen this, you can kind of see where this is going to actually follow up in. So let's go to let's go to Content Builder and click on, if you're in Marketing Cloud, you can follow along here, but just what we're going to do is we're going to just make a demo email here. So let's just make an email and just continue along with this activity that I was doing here for this cybersecurity company. So let's just say we're working for a cybersecurity company. I'm going to just walk through how I would create an email and how that would look in Marketing Cloud when I try to send it. So where I'm going to get my images from is going to be Unsplash. You can use these royalty-free images for absolutely free, and they're all high quality. So we're just going to make an email that in Content Builder that looks like a cybersecurity company. So, and we'll see what that looks like. So I'm going to create an email message. I could create an email template, but I'm not going to. Actually, here's what we can do. We can create an existing template. We'll create it from a basic template. We'll choose select, and we'll just make this template. So let's just say this template always has, let's just type in cyber security. Let's say this template always has this specific image as the header. So I'm going to download that. I'm just going to save this here, and I'm going to replace this image over here to the left with this cybersecurity image right here. Upload and publish that. And we'll let that upload and publish, and then that'll be the new header. And that's the only thing we're going to change on this template. So just to show you the value of a template here. So let's see if it'll load up. It's been going slow recently, but let's say we just save this. We can save this template as cybersecurity email template, save it, and then come through and maybe come in here and say in this text, welcome to cyber security land. And then keep some of this text in here, say we're so glad to have you. So something simple, we can keep it simple for now. Obviously, you can put anything you want in here. So let's just say we go to a URL here, and we go to this Unsplash website right here. I'm just going to keep this Unsplash URL and copy that. And I'm going to go to this button, and I'm going to change this button background to maybe, let's just say blue. Click that, save it, and then change the website URL to this Unsplash URL and click done editing. I'm actually going to change this button text to say, come to the website. And then I'm going to say done editing, done editing. And it is going a little bit slow on my end, possibly. So I'm going to turn off my camera and just see if that changes anything. So we're just going to save that. And we can come down here and put in some social media links if we want to. I'm going to change this and change this up and just say website name. Save this. Put this here, link color, keep it black, and say okay, and done editing. So we can always come in here and add as much customization as we want in this, this specific email. If we want to, we can come in here and also add in some dynamic content. So we can come in here and bring in dynamic content. Let's say right here, drag this in. And I could come in here and I could say, based on specific criteria, let's just say browse. We come in here and we have this company logo right here. We choose that, we select it. That could be the default image that people see. Depending on the data we're keeping about people inside of lists and profile attributes or data extensions, we can actually segment the images that we're going to show to people based on the data we have about them. So let's just say, for example, if we come in here, this is going very slow on my end, by the way. So we're just going to say provision contracts. Let's see here, depending on if their status is equal to a certain value. Let's just say if their status is equal to active, then they're going to receive this image of this VPN protected service right here. So we click save, and this would be the fallback. So if someone's status was set as active, we would show them that specific image. And we could add in multiple rules here. For the sake of just this demo, we're just going to keep this one, and then we're just going to save this. So this could be our template for our email that for any newsletter emails that we send out of Marketing Cloud when it comes to our cybersecurity company. And let's just think about when we're actually creating an email message, a new email message to send, what that's going to look like. So let's say we create an email based on an existing email, or sorry, based off of a template, a saved template, and this cybersecurity email template, and click select, and then name this monthly newsletter. Click next. We could leave a description. Subject line, monthly newsletter. Click enter, and then say you're not going to want to miss this. Exclamation mark. Click next or done. And now we can actually come in here with this email we're creating and create a new email without needing to actually put all this together ourselves. So this actually just saves you time and energy and resources. Just create the templates that you need to use for all of your different campaigns. And when people come in here and create an email, they can just come in here and add the information they need to add. So maybe there's just a few words they need to come in here and add, like they just might need to bring in a text content box right here and just say, hey, it was good catching up. We'll speak soon. Something like that. Super easy to do. Maybe just center that, and then, you know, just put your updates. This just kind of represents the updates you're going to give in your newsletter. This could probably be as long as you want it to be. You could add in images here. But like I said, for the sake of the time for this demo, we're not going to create an entire email. You can see kind of what you can add in here and how you can customize this just with drag and drop. So everything is literally just click this image block, click replace if you want to add in a new image. Maybe I want to add this anonymous image here. Maybe I want to click here. I want to replace this with this closing laptop. And then I want to click here and replace this with this thing up here. So then you could come in here and you could change things up, right? You could just do anything you want. I'm not really thinking about what I'm going to type. It's just, you know, just you come in here and you bring in whatever you want to have in here and change this information up. So that's kind of how you put messages together. There's so many different variations you can do when you're creating a new message in Content Builder. You could also, if you're an expert at HTML and CSS, you could create all these emails with HTML and CSS as well. So that's what a lot of companies are looking for, is, you know, someone who can do that, because then you're really customized. So once you click next, you can actually test this against your data extension. So depending on the data extension you created this dynamic content from, let's say this specific one, when a customer is active, they have that image show up. So let's say I click on my data extension, cybersecurity project, choose, which one did I choose here? I think it was provisioned. And okay, we have provisioned being the field. And then we have, yeah, so that's what it is. So I would just have to come back here and I would have to change that specific dynamic content field. Oh, we have it right here. So that's why I can select it. So I'll choose this person, click select, and this image is going to change here. So once Marketing Cloud sees that this is an active, this is a provision status. Let's click next, next, expired. Let's go until we find an active subscriber. Not sure why it didn't open that one up. Select that person. And it's not showing them. But yeah, we would just have to find an active subscriber. Not sure why that's not showing up on this specific example. But once this active column is chosen, you're pretty much going to see that. I'm trying to get the active to show up. There we go. Well, no, it tried to show up, but it went away. Okay, so, but yeah, it's basically, I'm going to just show you that image if this status would show up as active. I'm not sure why it's not popping up from the data extension we have chosen right here, but that's just a troubleshooting thing. But what we're going to do is we're going to look at the SIN classification. So this is what I really wanted to show you is now that we've created an email, let's look at the SIN classification. So remember, I created a SIN classification a little bit earlier. Now I can go to my test classification that I created earlier. And if this is a transactional email, let's say I just created a email that shows all the receipt information with AMP script built in to pull all the data and calculate everything, kind of like in our Starbucks example where it showed the exact number for how much I paid on my receipt. We could say, hey, this is a transactional type of message, and we could apply a transactional type of SIN classification to this specific message. Okay, so once we create this message, we could save it, and we could put this message into a journey builder journey. And every time a customer matches a criteria and hits on customer transaction occurred, this message could send out with this SIN classification as transactional, and we could end up just having what we need for our transactional messages. So that's what that is. That's the final edition of what that actually looks like when it comes to working on creating the material inside of Content Builder and seeing it all pay off with your SIN classifications. So that is it for my demo. I am going to stop sharing, and I guess we will just take questions here for a bit, but that's all I've got for everybody.
Hey, thanks very much, Caleb. This is very detailed and it's great content. Let's look at the questions. And thanks to Chris, as always, and Lakshmi and few others who have been answering the questions. And anyone, if you have any other questions which are not answered, please feel free to type them in the chat window.
Everyone is saying some really great things about how well you did a great detailed session, Kaylin. So great job. Some people are asking, do you need to learn HTML and CSS to be an email specialist? It's not necessarily a requirement because we have such a cool WYSIWYG. This is actually just a bunch of thank yous, Kaylin. I think you did an awesome job. And like JB just said, Chris and Lakshmi and so many others who are jumping in to answer questions as Kaylin is speaking. Huge thank you to all of you guys. I don't see any questions coming in. You show us where, hold on. Can you show where to add unsubscribe link and mailing address?
Yeah, I can show you that. So let's look at, let's go to, give me 1 second. Okay. So I'm going to share my screen. So the first thing we want to think about is, this is something that I struggled with for a long time when I first started off in Marketing Cloud. Can everyone see my screen, by the way?
Can you make sure that it's full screen? Some people are saying that it's a little hard to see the details.
Okay, let me change. This is a large monitor that it's on, so I'm going to just change it to the smaller one. Okay, this should help. Okay, can everyone see that a lot better?
Looks good to me.
Okay. So at the very bottom of the every email that you're looking at under preview and test, you're going to have the physical mailing address and the unsubscribe link and manage subscription and update profile links already included. And the reason that is because remember, if you go back to your delivery profile, it has your header and footer that you want to use. And this is using that send classification that we chose is choosing that physical mailing address. But let's go and look at where that physical mailing address actually shows up. So where do you actually change this is actually another question I'm sure a lot of people might be having, like, how do I change this right here? So, okay, look, give me 1 second. I'm gonna log into my org because I've been kicked out. So give me 1 second.
I just so everyone know, we do see your questions coming in and we will ask them to Kaylin as soon as he finishes with answering this question. So, no worries, they're coming.
Okay. So if we go to setup and we go to our account settings, once this opens up, when we go to our account settings under company settings, we can look at, we're having some issues today with connecting, but under account settings, you'll be able to see what your mailing address is. And that's where that data is stored. Not sure why I'm not able to connect, but all you need to do is come to setup and then come to account settings and then look for your physical mailing address. And then that's going to show up in your email and content builder. So maybe, did I answer the question or do you still have a question on that? Do we still have that question or did that answer that?
Waiting on them to get back to us and tell us if it has answered the question. I think that does answer the question because it does technically tell them. I know we weren't able to see the screen, but it does tell us where we can make that, where we can put the physical address at. So I think that answers the question pretty well.
Okay.
Yeah, so
mailing address.
Lakshmi is saying, do we need to add it to the template? No, Lakshmi, you don't need to add it to the template if it's going to be like the same physical email address. Most people just add it in the setup on the setup side of the marketing cloud. You can go into setup and make it there, and it's just going to keep that address there every time. You don't need to add it to the template.
Yeah. And as you can see in this email, automatically it's pulling substitution strings from the setup menu we just looked at, and it's pulling the business name. It's pulling the address field. It's pulling the city field, the state field, the postal code field, and the country field. So that's going to automatically render whenever we are previewing and testing and sending the message.
Kaylin, we have one question. It says, what's the difference between a global and a primary unsubscribe? And how do they happen?
Yeah, so good question. So a global unsubscribe, there's 3 types of unsubscribe. So there is global, there is account level, and then there's list level. So let's go with the smallest to the largest. So list level is, let's say I have a specific list inside of, I really can't connect with Marketing Cloud right now. I wanted to show you, but a list level unsubscribe is, hey, I'm sending this let's just say Christmas newsletter list or this Valentine's Day list message, it's specifically for a specific campaign. And let's say you want to unsubscribe from that specific list, just that specific campaign. You could say, I don't want to receive messages about this specific information anymore, but you can keep all of your other subscriptions open. So that's list level unsubscribe. Account level unsubscribe is where you say unsubscribe from everything. So that's, I want to unsubscribe from all the lists, all your email lists. I just want to stop getting messages from you. Global unsubscribe is something that's like, honestly, most people are never going to do global unsubscribe. Most of the global unsubscribes are people like spammers and people on block lists. So people who literally can never get a message from Marketing Cloud ever because they're either known spammers or spam traps, which yes, there are companies that exist specifically to trap you with and say you're spammers. Don't know why they exist, but they do. And Marketing Cloud and Salesforce have rules in line for companies like that. So the global unsubscribe list is basically saying you're never going to receive a message from any Marketing Cloud user anywhere in the world, no matter which company it is. So that's very rare. Somebody's going to say, unsubscribe me from that. Hopefully that helps. No, you have to contact. So I'm looking at this question. Can a subscriber do the global unsubscribe from his or her end? I don't think so. Correct. That's going to be, you're going to have to make a case with Salesforce support to actually, like the customer would actually have to go to, I don't even, honestly, I've never even seen how they would have to do it, but they would have to go to Salesforce support, open up a ticket and say, never send another message to me again from any Marketing Cloud environment. So I don't know the exact process is for that, but you have to reach out to Salesforce for that.
Can you talk to us about when you would use dynamic content versus Einstein products, and when you would use what's the difference between dynamic content and enhanced dynamic content?
Yeah, so you have, and sometimes, honestly, I even get confused about this and I have to go back to documentation. I'm not perfect when it comes to every single thing, but from what I understand, and correct me in the chat if I am wrong, but dynamic content is content basically that is you've got your images inside of Content Builder, you've got everything ready to go, and you are creating your rules, right? You create those rules. Like if a customer lives in Florida, show them this image of sandals. If a customer lives in Alaska, show them an image of these snowshoes, right? You can create a dynamic content and you can pull from the images and content that's already in Content Builder and pull from right there. With enhanced dynamic content, I'm pretty sure you can go a little step further and you can pull from like a content management system that stores that outside of Marketing Cloud. But I would definitely do more research.
That's exactly correct.
And maybe parking lot that question. But and then when it comes to what was the first part of the question?
The question was, let me scroll back up real quick. You did it really good. That is the difference. Dynamic content is things that's within content blocks, that's within Salesforce Marketing Cloud. And then enhanced dynamic content is using the external content blocks, which is like things that are outside third-party URLs. So great answer there. I have a question that I want to finish. I can't find it. Can you tell us when we would use Einstein products?
Yeah, and Einstein, that's another thing that's kind of a little bit outside of my radar right now because there's so few companies that are actually using Einstein. Salesforce is, obviously making a push for companies to start using that artificial intelligence piece of determining the next best offer to show. But to be honest with you, unless you have a team in place that knows how to use Einstein and understands kind of the artificial intelligence, machine learning side of things, just even slightly, I don't know if it's something that I would just jump on board to try to use if there's no resources to do it. So the other piece, what was the other piece? The dynamic content versus Einstein. If I'm thinking about dynamic content, the differentiator, after kind of saying my spiel about Einstein, is the difference for me is that Einstein is going to be the one choosing the next best image or the next best GIF or the next best content block to display to that user based on very specific data that you're tracking about that user. So what Einstein does is it takes millions and millions of pieces of data and it creates these algorithms, and it says, here's the next best action, kind of like social media does to us to keep us engaged. So it's kind of using that same strategy, but you kind of have to set that up. So I would say continue with dynamic content until you really understand Einstein and can really set that up and actually have that much data being aggregated to make those decisions. But it's really kind of, Einstein's like the next best product to offer based on artificial intelligence. Dynamic content, it's going to be based on the data we're storing about the customer. This is what we're going to show to the customer. Explain what the definition is. I just want to just show this to you as far as what I've received in these screenshots here. So